What we're really looking for is someone to acknowledge the work that you're doing, someone to like say, whatever it is, someone to like see you as a person and not as like an entity that keeps holding space for everybody else. And it's that human connection piece. So the idea of you being somebody who's like, okay, here we are, like we're here, I'm a human, you're a human, and you've got all these things going on. Tell me what these things are. And like the amount of people that are looking for that is, I think that's got to be overwhelming. Hello and welcome to the And Both podcast. Here we are going to hear from moms and those in motherhood that are doing the thing that works for them. They are honoring themselves alongside the all-encompassing role and level of expectation that is modern motherhood. And we are going to hear from as many different people as possible in their own experience. So you can find people to relate to. You can hear stories that will make you laugh, make you cry, all of the above, and that we will come together as a community to support one another in a way that is holistic and honoring of the woman and the mother as a whole. Hello and welcome to season 4 of the And Both podcast. This week, we are kicking things off with Jessica Hunt. She and I had a wonderful conversation at the tail end of the school year. So you are hearing this in real time as we've all gone back into a regular school year. So she joined me. We talked about parenthood and relationship dynamics between parents as a couple within the context of parenting. We talked about her really narrowing in on the idea of acknowledging parents where they're at in terms of seeing people for what they are doing and acknowledging them as a person. So that feels really close and near and dear to what we're aiming for here at And Both, and that is to see people for who they are and to get to know them and to get to hear their stories. So she is a psychotherapist. She is based out of California. She specializes in working with parents and couples to enhance their relationships in reconnecting with themselves and their partners. Her services focus on self-compassion, mindfulness, and connecting with one's identity as it evolves throughout life transitions and stages. And she also does consulting, workshop facilitation, and public speaking, as well as resources to support self-care and self-paced learning. I had a wonderful time connecting with her, and I hope you enjoy this episode. I am here today with Jessica Hunt. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'd say us. It's me. It's just and me hanging out here.
The us is the audience.
Right. Yes. Everybody else. Yeah. Collectively us. So how about if we start off with my favorite question? Who are you? What fills your bucket? And like, what do you do? All that stuff.
Oh my goodness. That is a hard question, I feel like, for me to answer these days because I'm so many things. And I play so many different roles. So who am I? It often feels like, well, who am I talking to at the moment? I am a mother. I am a therapist. I am a wife. I am a friend. I am an employee. I am a small business owner. I'm all the things that kind of make up my personality. So it's kind of hard to choose just one. And I feel like that identity is like ever evolving. So yeah, I definitely think that question is like multifaceted. But for the purposes of being here today and how I'm representing myself, it's mostly as a psychotherapist and mother.
Nice. How old are your kids?
They are 5 and 7, though my 7-year-old will be 8 in a couple weeks. Or, oh my gosh, 1 week, the 17th. He'll be 8 in a week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so 5 and 8.
That's crazy. It's coming up quick. I know like my kids are in that, some of my kids are in that, like I'm like 4 3/4 or whatever, like that, like math when it's really important to hit the next thing.
100%.
And then some of them are a little older and they're like, no, I'm 11.
Well, I was doing that whole like obligatory, like, last day, first day of school, like social media post, and I was writing down on it like some like fun facts about my 8-year-old, and I put when underage, I put 7, and he was like, "No, say 8," and I was like, "But you're not 8 yet," and he's like, "Yeah, but I'm gonna be 8 really soon, so put 8." Like he wanted so badly to be older because he's so young amongst his peers. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Having a birthday at the end of the year.
yeah, exactly. So I'm sorry, you said your kids are how old?
My kids are 11, 9, 6, and 4.
11, 9, 6, and 4. Oh wow, you got a full house.
Yeah. Full deck. Full deck. Not full vehicle. The vehicle's enormous, but it's a full deck. My deck is full.
What car do you drive?
I have a Suburban.
I asked.
Because it's not even so much it's the kids, it's the things that come with the kids.
Absolutely. All of the things. I asked because I'm going to be in the market soon for a larger vehicle because now it's not just, schlepping my own family around. It's the neighborhood kids and the friends and going to and from sports and different activities. And I realized that I'm going to need a vehicle with more space. So that's I was like, I bet you know what it's like to have a lot of kids in the car. I should ask you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, like it definitely, if you buy a bigger car, you're going to use the space in the car, which is a hilarious, like koi fish problem to have with your luggage.
I feel like that's like applicable in any area of your life.
Gosh. So yeah, right. Like if you buy the bigger suitcase, you're going to pack more clothes kind of situation.
Exactly.
For sure. All right. So you are getting ready. So the kids are coming out of school. What are they doing in the summer?
Well, my 8-year-old is at summer camp. His aftercare program at the school, which is awesome. They also do a full all day, all summer camp. And it's a really, really wonderful program. So that's where he is. And my 5-year-old is doing his very last month of preschool. He's been at the daycare / preschool that he's at for, since he was 5 months old. And this is his last month there. And then I'm going to have him do the same summer camp at the aftercare program that my older is at for July so that he can kind of get acclimated to the environment before he's there full time starting in the fall because he's entering kindergarten. So it's a little split half and half with him. But his preschool's year round, so that's where he's kind of always been. And that's kind of weird because we've actually been at that facility or that program since my 8-year-old was 5 months old. So he went from 5 months to right before leaving for kindergarten, and same with my 5-year-old. And so we've been there for 8 years now, and it's like closing a chapter on motherhood in a way, saying goodbye to that school.
That's a big chapter.
Yeah, it is. But I'm ready for it. I'm ready to have one drop off.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. I'm in my last year of one drop off ever. And then my oldest will go to middle school and then they'll never be at the same school ever again. And I'm just like, man, I have it so good right now. I mean, my youngest is in preschool, so he isn't there full time, but it's going to be an interesting situation next year, trying to just sort out the timing of everything.
Now, are all of your kids doing the same thing over the summer, or are they all doing their own like separate interests?
No, it's like a buckshot of children and activities. It's total chaos. This is one of the things that this is one of the reasons why I wanted to start a podcast, because I feel like there's so many people that are like, forever and ever it was like we were still doing like the Zoom meetings with like the kids in the summer, and then there's always stuff going on, and it's like this whole like not Lord of the Flies in like the survival sense, but the Lord of the Flies in terms of the employment sense. And I just was like, like one's going to camp this time and one's going to camp this time and that time, and I'm just like, I think we're gonna be okay, but there might be some serious like cartoon time and there might be some whatever. So no, we are in a no man's land of coordinated plans, and I have accepted that as my fate.
Absolutely. I very much empathize, but it's very strategic though. Me having them like, okay, this aftercare program they do all day. It's 2 blocks from our house. There's also a because of the type of community that we're in, we have a very, very active swim team in the community, and my older is on it. And they actually have walkers that go from the camp at the school to the pool and back. So middle schoolers will come and walk the younger kids back and forth from practice from the camp and back. So you don't even have to like interrupt your day to deal with swim team practice and things like that. And it's very well integrated because both the school and the pool are so influential in the community. And so it really just is too convenient not to use. Just makes my life so much easier. I'm sure my kid
And where do you live?
have
How
like,
does
week doing this, a week doing that. But I'm like, nope, both your parents have to work. You're doing this thing that's super easy for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where do you live that they have this arrangement of middle schoolers that like shepherd people? Because that sounds ideal.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And I actually know there's lots of kids who volunteer to be walkers. So I live in Walnut Creek, California. It's about 30 minutes east of San Francisco. And I absolutely love my community. But Walnut Creek as a whole, I love, but my community in particular, my neighborhood, it's very like that quintessential suburban neighborhood where there's kids that still run door to door to collect other kids and play in the yard and ride their bikes around, and like a lot of stuff that like is reflective of my own childhood, which I think a lot of kids don't get an opportunity to have as much these days. And that's one of the reasons why my husband and I really wanted to move to the neighborhood that we did move to, is because it still had that vibe to it. And like kids literally like yelling over fences, like, hey, you want to come over? And we kind of love that. And because the pool and that swim team is like so important to the community, and it's a huge social event for both kids and adults, there's like Facebook groups where parents will be like, hey, my kid wants to be a walker, if anyone needs a walker. And like, what's nice about the walker that I have for my son is I am good acquaintances with the mother, and she's actually one of the directors of the board of the pool, and she has 3 kids, and her middle is now going up into middle school. Her older is already in middle school, and her youngest is actually in the same grade as my kid. So I'm very familiar with the boys. Her olders always come and help out with like other sports, because my oldest and her youngest have been on the same like sports teams for several seasons of, soccer and basketball and baseball. And then her olders will come and help out and help shepherd the kids during practices. And so I'm really familiar with these boys, and I can trust them very, very much to walk the 2 blocks back and forth and make sure that, my kid gets to where he needs to go. And there's a lot like that. And so there's probably a good dozen middle schoolers who are like, yeah, I'd love to walk the little kids. And chances are they also have a sibling who is like included in that walking and everything like that.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun when you have these like pockets of neighborhoods and communities where like things are still throwback kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad that it's like you have to look for a throwback, but it's nice that you can still find that option and opportunity some places.
I feel very, very lucky.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And so do you work from home? Do you see clients from home then, or do you go into the office or a office?
I have 2 separate jobs. I have a traditional 9 to 5, and then I also have my own business. And so I do both. And depending on what job I'm doing at the time changes the location. But I'm either usually in an office or at home, depending on the day of the week and depending on which hat I'm wearing at the time.
Nice. And so the seeing people in therapy, is that your own gig? Is that your own
correct
shingle, so to speak?
I have also seen people in therapy in my more W-2 employment, but because I've worked in mental health for over 20 years, and I actually work
Mhm.
for the county that I live in. I work for their mental health department, and I have at various times in my career there done direct practice, but I have moved up into a management role at this point. So I am now no longer seeing clients when I'm doing my role working for the county. I'm now supervising programs, but I have, and then in my private practice is where I see clients, and that has all so far been via Zoom. But I've
Mhm.
actually just started offering walk and talk sessions for anyone who also lives in the Bay Area, because I feel like there's a lot of great benefit to getting out in the fresh air and the sunlight and moving your body while you're talking. I mean, there's a reason why we pace back and forth when we're trying to like work through things or work through maybe anxieties, is that the movement and the walking really kind of helps us process our thoughts and opens up opportunities to be creative. So I just started offering walk and talk sessions. So I'm looking forward to kind of seeing those come to fruition.
I love that idea. That idea of like you just go like if I mean, even if I guess it's like one of those like benefits of COVID, right? It's like how many people would be like, yeah, walk and talk. But like think about how many people started like getting together. Like when that was going on in my neighborhood, there was people walking, like they did the 6 feet apart thing, but there was so many people that walked because people were home. And it was like we all just have to like move and do things, and that peters off as people go back into the office, or all of these changes happen. But I think that's such a cool option for somebody
It's also
to
some
just be able to like
It's also something that
if
was
you have a
really
baby.
right, exactly. As it's exactly where I was about to go with that. Is that one of the thoughts behind it too? Is that when I was on
Yeah.
maternity leave with both my boys, I was in a couple different mommy and me groups where we would get together often and go for walks around the local reservoir, or there's lots of great walking paths in the Bay Area. And that was a huge lifeline for me, was going on those walks. And it was great because I could have actual adult conversations while pushing my baby and also getting some movement in. And that was something that I also really liked about that offering and building that into my practice, because I work with so many parents, if I have a parent who has a baby or a toddler who it's not easy for them to have that break to go off and do a Zoom session or whatever it be, like they can bring their kid and push them in the stroller while we walk and talk. And it reduces that barrier to entry for moms in that stage of life.
So smart. It's so smart. Because I feel like so many people, like, especially if you're in that position where like you're in it, it's hard to say like, well, I can't get into an office, but I also like Zoom is a no-go right now because of various factors. But if you can get out and move and do it that way, that's cool. I like that a lot.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I hope that like takes off.
I hope so too. uh, and I've considered also offering in person for private practice in like a more traditional office setting, though between my two jobs and parenting and life and stuff, it just hasn't been, with everything else I'm juggling, it just hasn't been realistic yet. And we'll see what the future holds as,
Hmm.
time passes and my business goes in different directions.
Yeah. I think too, like that's the idea of how we used to approach like a career change or like, starting a business or whatever. I feel like so much of that has changed as a result of the last couple of years.
100%.
Like I work remotely, and I don't know. I have no desire to ever have any office space. Like everybody that I work with is all over the country, and it works. But I like right now, my son is in the living room, and
Mm-hmm.
then I can get off the call and go to pick up kids at school. And I just don't have to, it's not one more thing to maintain. Like office space is one more thing to maintain.
100%.
I'm
And
pissed. I'm enough maintenance.
uh, video or telehealth just offers so much more flexibility across the board. Like, I don't have to just stick with people in the Bay Area. I can serve anyone in California. And I have a lot of clients that live in Southern California. And those are people that we wouldn't have been able to connect with before telehealth really took off in the last handful of years. I do understand the
Mhm.
desire for in person. It is a different experience, but that's why I'm hoping either walk and talk sessions, or let's say you have mobility issues and that's not so easy, we can meet and sit at the park bench. And like, of course, trying to accommodate and mitigate issues around confidentiality when we can, being in public spaces, but giving opportunities for in person that aren't having to also take on the responsibility of maintaining an office space is a problem that I'm trying to creatively solve.
Mhm. I like it. I think you're like onto something. That's awesome. And so people that you see, like, what is your specialty? What is your preference?
Yeah,
what is your, if you could pick,
sure.
or you have picked?
Yes, I mean, I have training in lots of different areas. Working in community mental health and county mental health, I certainly have had a wide range of experiences in terms of presenting problems and issues. But I have always gravitated towards, and perhaps this is just a reflection of where I'm at in my life, but I really enjoy working with parents and couples, or couples that are in the parenting stage of life. And specifically, I feel like there are a lot of professionals out there that say that they, work with parents where the primary focus is the parent's relationship with their child. And that is the work that's being done, is that building and nurturing that relationship. And while that's incredibly important, what I focus more on is the relationship that that parent has with themselves and their partner first. And of course,
Mhm.
the relationship with their child comes up, but it's more like a byproduct of the work that we're doing, because I feel like a lot of people tend to lose the sense of themselves and their identity and their connection with their partner and their connection with their own world that is beyond their role as a parent and house manager and whatever it may be, or just family manager. And so, how can we rebuild that relationship with yourself and your partner and your other identities, and then let the relationship with your child be a positive byproduct of that work?
Mm, I like that. And so do you see people that when do people come into your office? Like, at what point are they at, usually by the time they have arrived? Is it like the wheels are off the bus, or is it things are kind of like not, it doesn't seem the same,
It's a
or
wide range. A lot of people that come to see me, they're dealing with anxiety, burnout. A lot of people, in addition to playing, wife and mom and friend and all that, they're an employee and all the struggles with that. So just kind of managing it all. So they're burnt out, touched out. They're having imposter syndrome, people pleasing issues, perfectionist type issues. And when they come to see me, or just feeling really disconnected, and when they come to see me, they are either noticing those trends and want to kind of get ahead of it before it spirals, or they really feel like they have like lost themselves completely, and it's causing a problem in their
Mhm.
ability to function in their life the way that they want to or need to, and kind of everything in between. So while I am in my private practice and not working with people with severe and persistent mental illness, the mental health is a spectrum, and somewhere along that spectrum is a point where you're able to function in your life the way that you want to or need to, and then when you can't. And usually people, if you, and I realize that other people aren't going to see this because they're not on video, but if you're thinking about along the course of a spectrum and there being this like pinpoint in the middle, people are usually coming to therapy as they're either approaching that point or they've just passed it.
That's interesting. It's that idea of like, you like, maybe you know that like you would like things to be different, but you don't have time, you don't have this, you have all of these things, all of these things, all of these things. And it's like that idea of like, you can't put one more thing in your backpack and like be able to walk down the road.
Right.
And now things are falling out of the backpack.
Right. Exactly. Or things that have always worked for you in the past. Most people who come to see me, they have 30 to 50 years of life experience where they have survived and gotten through and used the coping skills that they already have, but for whatever reason they're rusty or they're not working like they used to, and they either need to rework it, build new ones, or just kind of like explore. Sometimes just having somebody to talk to that has no other purpose in your life but to just be in your corner. There's no agenda. There's nothing else that therapist is there for than to hold space for you and let you have your feelings and have your experience. And their only goal is to help you through that, or process it, or cope, or sit with it, or whatever it is that individual needs. And there aren't a lot of people in our lives who play that like distinct of a role where like that is the main function. That's the only function.
I think that's interesting because I feel like oftentimes as a mom, your responsibility is to be that space holder for everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so who's going to be that for the mom?
And then you get to a point where you're like, exactly.
Enter me.
And you go ahead. Sorry.
I said, enter me. I will be that person.
Yes. And I think that's it's so like, I don't want to say simple as in a like easy way, but I just think that the idea that so many of the solutions that people seek out, and when I say people, I mean moms, like I think that so many of the solutions that moms seek out and so many of the pushback, like, so there's the self-care thing, right? Where it's like bubble baths and like, and all of that, where it's like, it's a simple thing, but it's a thing and it's an exchange, right? Like, here's your bath so you feel better. However, the bathtub does not hold space for you to have all of the feelings that you have. Like, you're looking for something. I have a thing that I can sell you as a business, like a bubble bath product or, slippers or whatever it is. But that's just a thing. And what we're really looking for is someone to acknowledge the work that you're doing, someone to like say, whatever it is, someone to like see you as a person and not as like an entity that keeps holding space for everybody else. And it's that human connection piece. So the idea of you being somebody who's like, okay, here we are, like we're here, I'm a human, you're a human, and you've got all these things going on. Tell me what these things are. And like the amount of people that are looking for that is, I think that's got to be overwhelming.
What I was going to say that made me think of as you're talking about the bubble baths and the little self-care moments and stuff, it's not an either or, it's an and both. to touch on.
Oh, really?
Yes. I think that's a perfect conversation for this particular podcast, because it's not the bubble bath's not enough, you need therapy, or the therapy is it's not an either or, they're not mutually exclusive, it's an and both, and they work together. And one, it's those necessary little treats and moments where you're just kind of, it's momentary, but you're really taking care of yourself. And yes, it's not going to hold space for you, it's not going to solve deep-seated historical, like personal histories, but it does have a purpose, and it's not one or the other. And then what you were saying earlier before as well about acknowledgement, I recently on my Instagram I put out a poll that was like, if you're really feeling like basically crushed by the mental load right now, what do you need more? Do you need acknowledgement of all that you're doing, or do you need someone to take over something and take something off your plate? And the overwhelming majority of responses were they just wanted recognition. And of course, it is important to take things off people's plates when you can, But I think that it just was, of course, it was a very small sample size, but I think that it speaks to how little recognition moms are feeling for all that they do right now. And that is something that therapy can provide. I said to a client the other day who was feeling ignored by her healthcare provider and not taken seriously by her healthcare provider, I just said to her, like, you deserve to not be in pain. And that just having one person acknowledge and validate her pain and tell her that she deserved to not feel pain, that was something so foreign to her. She actually just started immediately crying because she's like, why is that? Why has no one said that to me? And like you said, it's not easy, but it's simple.
Yeah. And I think too, like, you know, it's so much of the things that we do that are, like I have many crashing thoughts at the same time. I'm trying to tease them apart from each other. Yeah, right. I think that's the crux of the issue, is that you can't take something off of somebody's plate until you know exactly what's on their plate. And so it's the idea of like, you recognize as someone who has so many things going on, that you have so many things going on, but you don't necessarily realize how many are going on, because if everything just sort of like slides down the hill and lands in your lap, it just slides down the hill and lands in your lap. But when you get into that conversation about acknowledgement, that means that somebody sees what you're doing and somebody says like, hold on a second, like, holy cow, you have a lot going on there. This is like amazing, but also this is not like a reasonable ask for one person. So I'm going to take it off the plate. So it's like, it's the back and forth between the just give me a list or tell me what to do versus the look around and find something to do.
Right. That's also a struggle that I had, because I'm a big proponent when I do couples work that you can't expect your partner to read your mind. Because so many marital problems happen or just relationship problems in general, not just in marriages, but they are applicable to all types of relationships. But expecting someone to read your mind is a recipe for setting them up to fail. And how do you balance that also with not, a tricky thing that I work on a lot with clients is, how do you balance the not expecting your partner to read your mind, but also having someone have the mindfulness and wherewithal to observe what your partner needs and trying to help them meet those needs, or initiating a conversation without putting them in another role of like, okay, now I have to oversee you, and now I'm delegating to you because I'm still micromanaging the situation. And like that delicate balance of, okay, it's not another thing for me to be in charge of delegating to you, but at the same time, I can't expect you to read my mind. So how do you balance those two things? And it's tricky, and it can be really difficult for a lot of couples to find that balance.
I think that's where like the Eve Rodsky fair play, I feel like that's where that has become like a lightning rod to have those conversations, to maybe like open it up, and then that gets to the acknowledgement piece. But I don't know that that's necessarily a long-term solution, because it's very much a dividing of tasks, and I understand that, and that it all like makes perfect sense, and I think it's a great starting point. But as you and I are both, or have both said in this conversation, like the periods of our life that we're going through are constantly evolving, and so it's that idea of like, there has to be like a back and forth to it, like, where the back and forth doesn't mean that everything just eventually slides back down.
Yeah.
How do you keep it going?
Yes, but they're ongoing conversations. This isn't a one and done, like, okay, we have done a division of labor as a couple, and I take care of these things and you take care of these things, and that's it. We never have to talk about this again. No, it's a constant conversation, and constantly picking up the slack for the other when they need it, and acknowledging that life is messy and it needs like constant reworking and constantly checking in with one another and having that open communication so that, it's not like, oh, but I never do that. Well, sometimes you're going to have to do that.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and that's part of the deal, right? It's like if you say I never do that, and then the other person says I never do that, then you're right back to where you started. Because
Exactly.
what you did is you just shuffled everything up, but you're back in the same category, just
Right.
further down the road.
And acknowledging that things will, like, anytime you set up a new system there or bring something to light or communicate about it, like the problem will be fixed for a period of time because it's more top of mind. When somebody's more cognizant of an issue, they're going, right after it's brought to their attention, they're obviously going to pay more attention to it. But naturally over time, the pendulum is going to swing in the other direction and things will fall off. And rather than, letting it fester and build resentment, bringing that to the attention and moving the pendulum back in the other direction of being more top of mind. Like, for an example, in that very, very stereotypical gendered, split between leaving dishes in the sink and not leaving dishes in the sink, I am the stereotypical man in that situation. I let shit soak. It drives my husband batty because, like, he's like, just put it away. Just finish washing it and put it in the dishwasher or put it, in the drying rack or whatever. Like, me just leaving shit in the. I'm sorry, I can swear, right?
You can swear. You're good. We're all moms here.
Leaving shit in the. I am that person, for better, for worse. It's just that's where we do not follow any sort of traditional gender roles. And my husband will gently bring it to my attention that this has, started to become more and more of an issue, and it'll be very top of mind. I'll be very cognizant of it. And I'm very, like, on top of, like, oh yeah, I put that immediately into the dishwasher. I washed it and dried it right away and put it away. And I am on it. And then I'm not on it anymore. And it just becomes less and less top of mind. And the pendulum swings in the other direction. And more I'm leaving stuff to soak. And it's not because I don't care about my husband's issues. It's not because I didn't hear him or I, don't, want to be that for him. It's that sometimes my natural inclination to not do that thing is going to start being overpowering over time. And he will gently remind me again that it's getting a little out of hand, and it's back, and the pendulum swings back in the other direction again. And it's not a malicious thing. It's not something that we have to fight about because we both assume positive intent and acknowledging, like, who we naturally are as people and trying to find some middle ground that works for both of us. And in our particular relationship, that means communicating what a need is not being met and hearing that person, not defensively, taking it in, assuming positive intent, and then trying to meet that need in a ways where we're not kind of building resentments in one way or the other. And it's not a perfect system, but I always say, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, because that is, it's a system that works for us because we understand that the other person means well or he's not trying to nag me. I'm not trying to disrespect him. It's just, we have naturally different tendencies and we have to communicate and work together to find a middle ground that works for both of us.
Yeah. I think that the biggest piece of that is the positive intent piece.
Yeah.
Because that's the difference between we're trying to figure out how to do this thing called life together versus why are you bothering me? And that's like, talk about like the great divide on the argument highway. Like, do you want to go down the positive intent road? Yes, everybody does. But if you don't go down the positive intent road and it becomes that nagging, disrespect, like all of those pieces that live in that bubble together, how do you get back to positive intent? And to do that without someone helping, someone maybe stepping in and saying, okay, let's have these conversations and open this up, the communication between, so that you can say where you're coming from, they can say where they're coming from, and get back to that space of positive intent set you back down on
Right.
the path of.
Yeah, and it's not just the therapist teaching you those communication skills or bringing those to light or helping you practice those more effective communication skills, because that's definitely a big part of it, but it's also observing patterns. And a lot of times I'll just sit back and watch the conversation that's happening between the couple so that I can see where like certain, maybe not red flags, but flags nonetheless are like popping up of like, I wonder if they know how defensive they sounded in that response. And sometimes I'll point it out. It's like, I heard so and so say this, and this was your response. Did that sounded like you were feeling really defensive just then? And they'll be like, no, I wasn't. I'm like, those particular words, not just the words, or it's not just what you say, but how you say it. And kind of being able to be that observer and point out and reflect back on them what the patterns that I'm noticing in the conversation. Sometimes that's enough for a person to be like, oh, but I said all the right words. I said the good communication words that you told us to say. I'm like, yes, but how you said it, that still gave off the negative intent feeling. And even if that's not actually what was intended. So just being able to be there as a person to point that out to them and reflect that back to them can be effective for a relationship. It's also very validating for the other member of the couple to be like, yes, they do sound defensive. Like where the person like not to like gang up on anybody, but to just validate what someone's hearing and helping that person feel like seen and validated is also really important.
I love that. So when did you start your practice?
My private practice? That is like a 2-part answer. I technically started it December 22, but I like really, really like officially started it in September of 23.
Okay. So I was going to say, if you started before COVID,
because
I feel like.
No, I did a lot of therapy during COVID, but that was for like a W-2 position. Like I've been working in the mental health field in a variety of jobs for over 20 years, but wanting to branch out to my own business has been a fairly recent venture. But yes, I did a lot of therapy during the COVID times.
So from that, like pre-COVID, beginning of COVID, all of that to like, as people come out, like, are you noticing trends and like things that are sort of like in terms of things going back to the way they were before? Because I feel like the intro to the question is really, we all went into COVID and it was that idea of like, there's nobody to provide care. There's no babysitters. There's no schools. There's no nothing. Right. And so it's just you and your family in your home. And that's like this awakening period of like, oh my gosh, these are all the things that I'm responsible for. What is going on? There's this recalibration, women get together and they scream in a field. Like all of these pieces happened. And I feel like there is more of a return to the pre-COVID time when people go back out into the world and people go back to if they go back into the office and things like that, where we're sort of slowly, speaking of the pendulum, it's slowly sliding back to like a lot of things are falling on laps. However, given the experience of COVID and the like, the sharing of it on social media and the conversations about it on regular media and pieces like that, like there seems to be an even bigger stage set for this like face off about what is equity and what is caring and who is responsible for what and all of that. So I don't know if you've seen that in your.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think a lot of the inequities were really brought to light with COVID for a variety of different reasons. One, so much more was just asked of parents, and a lot of that load went to mothers because it just naturally does. And because it was like so much more of that, I think that we got it was quicker to get to a breaking point where you felt like enough is enough. And then I do think that some light was shed on it. For some couples, it kind of went almost in two different directions. And this is, of course, speaking in generalizations, but it was either the partner really seeing all of the load for the first time because they were all at home at the same time. And so it all of a sudden the partner was like, it was in their face how much their partner did, their wife did. And that built empathy and built an understanding and built a desire to help out more. Or it was the opposite. The person still didn't recognize it. The person did recognize it, but still wasn't helpful. And it's a lot easier for, I think just to stay in like a heteronormative relationship, it was easier for, I think, a wife to excuse her husband's lack of helpfulness or lack of acknowledgement when they were away at the office for so much of it, but to have them that there at home and seeing it and being witness to it all and not changing their behavior or their opinion, that like it was like, that was also a breaking point. And then I think another factor was the way that social media changed during that time. Prior, I think there still is a lot of like the perfect Pinterest mom and things like that. But I think there was something about COVID that allowed people to be a little bit more raw and real on social media and show struggle and show the other side of it. I mean, certainly social media is still very curated and people see only what, you want them to see. But I think that there was a little bit more of a push to be our realer selves during that time because that was our only connection to a lot of people during the time of a great isolation. And so I think that made room for these conversations to come to the surface more as well and realize like, oh, this is a pain point for you as well. It is for me, and like feeling connected that way. One of the, lots of bad things about social media, that's definitely one of the pros.
And then what do you notice now that we're moving, farther away from that phase?
The couples that are doing well have made lasting changes based on that. And the couples that are struggling are ones that reverted back to pre-COVID dynamics a lot of the time. Of course, again, generalizations, but it's both. It's and both. Again.
See what we're doing here?
Yeah. I'm not intending to do this, but it's just so fitting.
It's just happening.
It's just happening. And it made couples stronger. It made them weaker. And you just see that in the work that I'm doing is the ones who it made stronger, and sometimes they're there to maintain that and do the maintenance work, and other ones where it had the opposite effect and made them pull further apart, and they're there trying to salvage something. You see if there is something to salvage.
Yeah, that would be a lot of walk and talking if you had all three. That's a very crowded pathway.
Yes, no, I
an emotionally crowded pathway.
When I've been envisioning the walk and talk, it's been me and just one other person, not a couple. Though I'm sure that would be an option. But no, all the couples work that I've been doing has all been via telehealth,
via Zoom. So what does the future look like for you? Like now that you've got you're going into this transition period, like one of your kids you're ending the daycare days and like the kids are going to be in school and things like that. Like what is something that you're looking forward to? Not necessarily because like all of a sudden like your whole life opens up, but like just transitioning away from that like toddlerhood and the baby piece and all of that. Like
it's bittersweet. I mean, there's definitely parts of me that are going to miss the chubby little thighs and the best giggles on the planet and all those good things. But there's a lot the baby and toddler and preschool stage is hard. And there are going to be lots of it that I don't really miss, or that I'm ready to move forward from. I feel more than anything, I feel ready for this next stage. I feel ready to have two kids in elementary school. I really enjoyed this elementary age with my older. It has been a real sweet spot in parenting for me, that so far that 5 to 8 range has been my favorite. And so I am excited to experience that with my younger, and kind of just really embrace that stage of life, knowing that it's fleeting, knowing that they're going to become preteens and teens and the dynamic will change yet again. Just kind of really try and be in this moment, which I feel is a bit of a sweet spot, at least in my family. I've also don't know why I'm doing this to myself, but I'm going to be PTA president for the next
Woo!
2 school years. And so I'm looking forward to what I can bring to the community in that role as well, and how I can interject a little bit of my expertise as a mental health professional into that, and how I can kind of bring some conversations that I think are important to be having for social emotional learning and mental well-being and family connectedness, and how I can inject that in with this role that I might not have the opportunity to have that influence without it.
I think that's amazing. I think that, there's such an opportunity to have a captive audience in that regard, and to be able to say, okay, here are some, like info sessions, or whatever it is, however you bring it, but being a flagpole for that conversation to start and figure out where it needs to go. I think that's a really big value add for a PTA.
I think that one thing I really want to do is as one of the pieces, because I certainly want to offer it without being like inundating and offering it, shoving it down people's throats, but didn't ask for it. Because, while I was elected, I was running unopposed. So it wasn't really that difficult. Something that I've been thinking about doing is doing like a monthly newsletter, a monthly like gazette, and for the school. And in addition to highlights of things going on in the community, and supporting certain local businesses or whatever it may be. I'm still, working out the ideas of all the different things I would want to put into it. I definitely think that I would want to interject, like, here's some conversation starters for you to explore, or like little like bite-sized things that I take from my work that I think might be beneficial for a family. Like, here's something you can do to feel more connected this month, or whatever it may be. I'm still working out the details, but I thought that could be a good forum to kind of put it into that like monthly newsletter, or provide some psychoeducation, provide some awareness. September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and one of my roles in my capacity with my county is I chair the Suicide Prevention Coalition for the county. And I do a lot of work in suicide prevention. So what is something very digestible and consumable for the lay people in my community on suicide prevention that I can kind of include in the September newsletter, for example, so that to support that conversation happening. And that way people can read it or not. But at least I'll feel like I've put it out there for my community.
I love it. That's awesome. So if people are wanting to get in touch with you, I hope that there are lots of people that are listening in California, but if people want to connect and reach out, how do people get in touch with you? Or where can they find you?
Absolutely. There are several places you can find me. I am, just my full Jessica Hunt, LCSW. LCSW is my licensure. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And so Jessica Hunt, LCSW is my handle on all social. My website is jessicahuntlcsw.com. You can email me at jessica@jessicahuntlcsw.com. basically, if you look up the Jessica Hunt LCSW, there's going to be no shortage of ways. And also on my socials, my link in bio has like all the various links that you might want, either ways to reach out to me, my affiliate links, all this is there. So if you just Googled any part of Jessica Hunt LCSW, you should find me in some way, shape, or form. And I'll hand you, after this, I'll give
That's
you
awesome.
all of my info. But luckily, there isn't another Jessica Hunt LCSW who snagged it all already.
Perfect. I mean, you got a .com. A .com these days is pretty tough, pretty tricky to get. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I think that is, it's awesome. When I had guests reach out for this season, I didn't realize how many therapists I was going to have on. And I think that there's a magic to that. I really do. I think there's a magic to people saying like, these are the people that I want to help, and being able to find places. So, hopefully there are people listening that are saying, you know what, I think that maybe this is an angle that I haven't thought about, or I'm ready to try this, or whatever it is, but some way for people to connect to that, to say this works or doesn't work, and then where to go from there. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I love your podcast, and I appreciate being here.
Thank you.